Imagine for a moment that you have just finished your weekly grocery shopping. It has been a long morning, your feet are a little tired, and you are ready to get home and put your feet up. You walk to your car, parked just where you left it, and you press the unlock button on your key fob. Nothing happens. You press it again, a little harder this time. Still nothing. The lights do not flash, the locks do not click, and the car sits there in silence. You look around, feeling that sudden rise of heat in your chest. Maybe you press the button 4 or 5 times in a row, panic starting to set in. This is a situation that happens to thousands of drivers every single day, and it can feel incredibly isolating, especially if the weather is bad or if you are in an unfamiliar parking lot. The immediate fear is that you are stranded, or that the car battery itself is dead, or that you will have to wait hours for a tow truck or a locksmith. But I want you to know that in almost every case, you are not actually stuck. Modern car manufacturers have designed a backup plan for this exact moment, but they have also done a very good job of hiding it to make the keys look sleek and fashionable. Knowing the secret way to bypass the electronics can turn a major emergency into a minor inconvenience. Hello, I am Dr. Laura Simmons. Welcome to Senior Safety Check. I've also added a helpful guide to the Senior Health Guide app, linked below. Now, let's dive in. Let me ask you a quick question to get us started. Have you ever been locked out of your car or had your key stop working when you needed it most? Let me know in the comments. When that key fob stops working, your body's stress response kicks in immediately. Your heart rate goes up and your focus narrows, which actually makes it harder to think clearly and solve the problem. That is why the first step is always to take a deep breath and remember that you have a physical key, even if you cannot see it. Almost every key fob, no matter how button-free or futuristic it looks, hides a traditional metal key blade inside the plastic casing. This is your lifeline. Let me tell you about Martha, a lovely woman from Columbus, Ohio, who found herself in this exact situation last winter. Martha is 72 and drives a newer sedan that has a push-button start and keyless entry. She had bought a gallon of ice cream and some frozen vegetables, and she was rushing to get them home before they melted. When she got to her car, the fob was completely unresponsive. She told me later that she felt a wave of embarrassment and fear, thinking she had done something wrong or that the car was broken. She stood there in the cold wind for 10 minutes, frantically searching her purse for a spare that wasn't there, before she finally called her son. It turned out she didn't need her son or a tow truck. She just needed to know about the little release catch on the back of her fob. On most fobs, there is a very small button or a sliding switch on the back or the side. It is often the same color as the case, so it blends in perfectly. When you slide that switch or press that button, the top of the fob or a section of the side will pull away, revealing a metal key blade. Martha had owned the car for 3 years and never knew it was there. Once she pulled that key out, she had the tools she needed to open the door. Stay with me here. Finding the key is only the first step, because once you have the metal blade in your hand, you might look at your car door and realize there is no keyhole. This is a design trend that has become very common in the last decade. To make the car look smoother and more aerodynamic, engineers have started hiding the lock cylinder underneath a cosmetic plastic cap on the driver's door handle. This can be very confusing if you don't know it is there. If you look closely at the handle on your driver's door, you might see a small slot or a tiny notch on the underside of the stationary part of the handle. That is where the tip of your metal key goes. You gently insert the key tip into that slot and carefully pry the plastic cap outward. It usually pops off with a little bit of force, revealing the standard keyhole you are used to seeing. It feels scary to do this because you might think you are breaking your car, but that cap is designed to come off. Once the cap is removed and you insert the key to unlock the door, you need to be prepared for what happens next. Since the fob is dead, the car does not know it is you opening the door. It thinks someone is breaking in. So, the moment you turn that manual key and open the door, the car alarm will likely start blaring. This is loud, startling, and can be very embarrassing in a crowded parking lot, but it is completely normal. Do not let the noise panic you. The car is doing exactly what it was programmed to do. This brings us to the next challenge, which is actually starting the engine to stop that alarm and get you home. You get in the driver's seat, the alarm is honking, and you press the start button, but the dashboard just says, "Key not detected." This happens because the battery in your fob is too weak to send the signal to the car's computer. However, the engineers thought of this too. Inside every key fob is a passive chip, very similar to the chip in your credit card that allows you to tap to pay. This passive chip does not need a battery to work. To make the car read this passive chip, you have to bring the fob extremely close to the reader. In many cars, this means you simply take the dead key fob and use the fob itself to push the start button. You physically touch the logo side of the fob to the start button while your foot is on the brake. The close proximity allows the car to read the security code directly from the chip, bypassing the need for a battery signal. The engine will start, and the alarm will finally turn off. I want to share another story with you, this time from Lars, who lives in Stockholm, Sweden. Lars is a retired engineer, so he is very practical, but even he was caught off guard. In Sweden, the winters are incredibly harsh, and extreme cold is terrible for battery life. One evening, after a dinner with friends, the temperature had dropped well below freezing. Lars got to his car, and his fob was dead. He knew about the physical key, and he managed to get into the car, but he didn't know the trick about touching the fob to the button. He sat in the freezing car for 20 minutes, trying to warm the key fob between his hands, hoping it would recover enough charge to work. While warming the key can sometimes help a tiny bit, it is not reliable. Eventually, he remembered reading the owner's manual years ago. He looked for a specific slot in the center console. In some cars, instead of touching the button, there is a dedicated slot or a pocket, usually in the cup holder or under the armrest, specifically shaped for the key fob. Lars found the slot in his console, dropped the key in, and the car started immediately. It is worth checking your own manual while you are sitting comfortably at home just to see if your car uses the touch the button method or the console slot method. This is important. Understanding why these batteries die can help you prevent it from happening in the first place. A standard key fob battery, which is usually a coin-shaped battery called a CR2032, typically lasts between 2 to 4 years. However, certain habits can drain them much faster. One of the most common mistakes people make is leaving their keys inside the car or hanging on a hook very close to the car, like in a garage. When the key is within range of the vehicle, the two are constantly talking to each other. The car is asking, "Are you there?" And the key is replying, "Yes, I am here." This constant communication keeps the key fob awake and drains the battery much faster than if it were stored further away. If you park in an attached garage, try to keep your keys inside the house, at least 20 feet away from the vehicle, or keep them in a metal tin or a special signal blocking pouch to stop this battery drain. Let's talk about how to fix this permanently once you are safe at home. You do not need to go to the dealership to replace a key fob battery. I often hear from seniors who are worried about breaking the electronics, So they pay the dealership a service fee that can be upwards of $50 or even $100 just for a $5 battery. Replacing it yourself is actually quite simple and requires only a small screwdriver or sometimes just a coin. Consider Robert from Tampa, Florida. Robert is 78 and lives on a fixed income. He noticed his range was getting shorter. He had to be standing right next to the driver's door for the button to work. That is the first warning sign, by the way. If you notice you have to be closer and closer to the car for the remote to work, your battery is on its last legs. Robert ignored this sign until the fob died completely. He took it to a dealer who quoted him a very high price for a replacement and programming. Robert called his grandson, who told him to just buy the battery at a local pharmacy. Robert was nervous because his hands aren't as steady as they used to be, and the plastic case looked sealed tight. But he found that once he had the mechanical key removed, just like we discussed for opening the door, there was a small notch in the plastic casing visible in the gap where the key used to be. By inserting the tip of a flathead screwdriver into that notch and giving it a gentle twist, the two halves of the shell popped apart. I want you to hear this clearly. When you open the fob, you will see a green circuit board and the round silver battery. It is vital that you do not force the battery out with anything sharp that could scratch the circuit board. Usually, you can slide it out with your fingernail or a non-metallic tool. Also, pay close attention to which side is facing up. Almost always, the positive side, the side with the writing and the plus sign, faces up. If you put it in upside down, it simply won't work. Robert managed to change his battery in about 5 minutes, and he felt a tremendous sense of accomplishment, not to mention he saved a good amount of money. There is another scenario that can mimic a dead battery, and it is becoming more common as our world gets more high-tech. Sometimes your battery is perfectly fine, but your car still won't unlock. This is often due to signal interference. We live in a soup of radio waves, from Wi-Fi routers to cell towers to security systems. If you are parked near a powerful radio transmitter, a neon sign with a faulty transformer, or even a large cluster of other vehicles with active security systems, the signal from your key fob can be drowned out. It is like trying to whisper to a friend at a rock concert. Even if your voice is working fine, they cannot hear you over the noise. In these cases, simply moving the fob closer to the receiver can help. The receiver is usually located near the window glass or the door handle. Holding the fob against the driver's side window while pressing the button can sometimes cut through the interference. We also need to discuss the condition of the fob buttons themselves. Over years of daily use, the rubber or soft plastic buttons can wear out or become misaligned. The electrical contact underneath the rubber button might get dirty or coated in oil from our hands. If you press the button and it feels mushy, or if it doesn't make that subtle little click that it used to, the problem might be mechanical wear rather than a dead battery. Don't miss this. There is a simple way to test if your remote is sending a signal at all, and you can do it with something you probably already own. Most modern smartphones have cameras that can see infrared light, which is the type of light some older remotes use, though many modern cars use radio waves which are invisible. However, a radio frequency tester is something many auto parts stores have on the counter. You can walk in, point your fob at their tester, and press a button. If the light on the tester flashes, your fob is sending a signal. If it doesn't, then the battery or the internal chip is the issue. Let me slow down here. I want to touch on something that scares many people, the idea that the key has been deprogrammed. It is very rare for a key fob to simply forget the car it belongs to just because the battery died. The memory in these chips is what we call non-volatile, meaning it stays there even without power. So if you change the battery and it still doesn't work, don't immediately assume the computer is wiped. It is much more likely that the new battery is a dud, which happens more often than you think with cheap battery packs, or that the battery contacts inside the fob are slightly bent and not touching the battery firmly. If you do find that a fresh battery doesn't solve the problem, there is a sequence you can try before paying for a professional reprogramming. This is often called a resynchronization. The exact steps vary by car, but a common method involves sitting in the car with all doors closed, inserting the key into the ignition, or holding it to the start button, and cycling the car from off to accessory mode a few times rapidly. We have covered a lot about the physical key and the battery, but I want to shift gears slightly to talk about the car battery itself. Sometimes the fob is fine, but the car's main 12-volt battery is dead. When the main car battery is the culprit, the symptoms are slightly different, and knowing the difference can save you from buying a fob battery you don't actually need. If you press the unlock button and see the small red LED light on your key fob flash, that means the fob is sending a signal. It is doing its job. But if the car remains completely silent, no clicks, no flashing headlights, and the dome light inside doesn't turn on when you peer through the window, then the car's main battery is likely drained. In this case, the physical keyblade will still get you into the driver's seat, but the car won't start even if you hold the fob to the button because the car itself has no power to wake up. Let me tell you about James, a retired teacher from Portland, Oregon, who loves to go fishing early in the morning. James is 74 and drives a rugged SUV that he takes up into the mountains. One morning, after a few hours by the river, he returned to his truck and pressed the button. Nothing happened. He saw the light on his fob flashing, so he assumed the truck's receiver was broken. He spent nearly an hour hiking back to a main road to get cell service, feeling anxious and short of breath the whole time. When the tow truck finally arrived, the driver didn't even look at the key fob. He popped the hood and saw that the battery terminals were covered in white corrosion. A simple jump start got James running again in minutes. James told me later that he felt foolish, but I told him it is a very common mistake. If he had known to check for that dim dome light or the silence of the door locks, he might have flagged down a passing car for a jump start instead of hiking in distress. It is a good reminder to keep a set of jumper cables or a small portable jump starter pack in your trunk, just in case. This brings us to another common enemy of key fobs: water. We have all been there. Maybe you dropped your keys in a puddle, or perhaps they went through the washing machine in a jacket pocket. Electronics and water do not mix well, but a wet key fob is not always a lost cause if you act quickly and calmly. The most important thing is what you do in the first 30 seconds. I want to introduce you to Sophia, who lives in Rome, Italy. She is a spirited woman of 68 who walks everywhere. One rainy afternoon, she dropped her keys into a deep gutter filled with water. She fished them out immediately, but she made a critical error. She tried to press the buttons right away to see if it still worked. Pressing the buttons while the circuit board is wet can cause a short circuit that permanently fries the electronics. When it didn't work, she went home and used a hairdryer on high heat to dry it out. The heat from a hairdryer can actually melt the delicate solder points on the circuit board or warp the plastic buttons. By the time Sophia brought the key to a shop, it was ruined. If this happens to you, do not press any buttons. Take the key inside, dry the outside with a towel, and immediately open the case just like we discussed for the battery change. Remove the battery. Then place the open fob and the battery in a bowl of uncooked rice, or even better, those little silica gel packets that come in shoe boxes and vitamin bottles. Leave it there for at least 24 hours. This draws the moisture out gently. Sophia now keeps a small jar of silica packets in her kitchen drawer just in case. Stay with me here. There is a preventative step that almost no one talks about, but it is vital for your safety and your wallet. It concerns that little metal tag that came with your keys when you first bought the car. Most people ignore it or throw it in a junk drawer and forget about it. That small tag has a code stamped on it. That code is the blueprint for your specific key. If you lose your key completely, perhaps it falls out of your pocket while walking, or, heaven forbid, it gets stolen. Getting a replacement without that code can be a nightmare. The dealership has to look up your car's VIN number, and in some cases, they may even suggest replacing the entire computer system of the car to ensure the old key can't be used to steal the vehicle. This can cost upwards of $500 and sometimes over $1,000 for luxury cars. If you have that code, however, a locksmith can cut a new physical key and program a new fob much faster and cheaper. I recommend you find that tag today. Write the code down in a secure notebook or take a photo of it and save it on your phone. Do not keep the tag on your key ring, because if you lose the keys, you lose the code too. It is a small administrative task that can save you a mountain of stress later. Speaking of locksmiths, this is a resource you should have ready before an emergency strikes. Many seniors instinctively call the car dealership when they have key trouble, but dealerships are often the most expensive and slowest option. They usually require you to tow the car to them. Automotive locksmiths, on the other hand, are mobile. They come to you, whether you are in your driveway or a grocery store parking lot. I suggest looking up a highly rated local automotive locksmith today. Write their number on a card and keep it in your wallet. Knowing you have a plan B reduces that feeling of panic we talked about earlier. When you are stranded, your brain is in fight or flight mode, and trying to search the internet on a small phone screen with shaky hands is difficult. Having that number ready is a safety net. Let me slow down here. We need to talk about the physical lock on your car door again. We mentioned earlier how to find the hidden keyhole, but there is a hidden problem with it too. Because we use the remote button every single day, we almost never use the actual keyhole. Over years of disuse, dirt, road salt, and moisture can build up inside that lock cylinder, causing it to seize up. Imagine the frustration of finally finding your hidden key, popping off the plastic cap, and then finding that the key won't turn because the lock is rusted shut. This happens more often than you would think. To prevent this, you should perform a simple maintenance task once or twice a year. You can buy a small tube of graphite lubricant. It is a dry powder, not a liquid, from any hardware store. Do not use standard oil or those popular spray lubricants like WD-40 for this. Oil attracts dust and dirt, which will eventually turn into a gummy paste that jams the lock even worse. Graphite is dry and keeps the metal moving smoothly without attracting grime. Just put a tiny puff of the powder into the keyhole and insert your key a few times to work it around. It takes 30 seconds, but it ensures that your emergency backup plan actually works when you need it. Now, I want to address the physical and emotional toll of these situations. Getting locked out or stranded is not just a mechanical problem, it is a physical stressor. If you find yourself in this situation and you have tried the key trick and the battery touch method and it is still not working, you need to prioritize your body. Standing outside in the heat or the cold for an hour waiting for help can be dangerous for your blood pressure and your hydration. If it is safe to do so, get back inside the car if you can open the door, even if it won't start. It gets you out of the wind or sun. If you cannot get in, find a safe spot nearby. I want you to look for a bench or a low wall, or even lean against a building. If you are going to wait, do not lock your knees while standing, as this can lead to dizziness or fainting when your stress levels are high. Always stand near a counter, a wall, or your car for stability. While you wait, try a simple breathing technique to lower your cortisol levels. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and exhale through your mouth for a count of 4. It sounds simple, but it signals to your nervous system that you are safe, which helps you think clearly enough to give the dispatcher your correct location. Let's recap what you can do today. First, check your key fob battery. If you haven't changed it in 3 years, just change it proactively. It is cheap insurance. Second, practice taking the mechanical key out of the fob while you are sitting safely on your couch. Get familiar with the button or the slide mechanism so you aren't fighting with it in the dark. Third, look at your car door handle and locate that hidden slot for the key. If you are feeling adventurous, pop the cap off and put it back on just to prove to yourself that you can do it. Finally, remember that technology is wonderful when it works, but it is not infallible. You are the one in control, not the car. By understanding these little hidden features, the mechanical key, the passive chip start, and the lock maintenance, you are reclaiming your independence. You don't have to be a mechanic to master this. You just have to be prepared. If videos like this help you, hit subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a tip. To recap, use the hidden physical key if the remote fails, hold the dead fob against the start button to drive, and keep your physical locks lubricated with graphite. Even small daily steps can help you feel steadier, safer, and more confident as you navigate the world.